The wind cut through Baltimore like a knife that morning. It was the kind of cold that didn't just touch skin but dug into bones, settling there, making every movement feel heavier. Streetlights buzzed faintly over cracked sidewalks, their yellow glow dim against the gray sky. A low mist hung over the streets, clinging to the edges of brick buildings and curling into alleyways like something alive. 10-year-old Ali pulled his coat tighter, though the thin fabric barely helped. It was an old coat 3 sizes too big, patched in 2 places, smelling faintly of the oil his father used at the docks years ago. His hands were buried deep in the pockets, fingers curled around the folded paper bag that held his lunch, half a sandwich, a bruised apple, and a small thermos of tea his mother had made before sunrise. The walk to the factory was not long, but it always felt longer in winter. The streets were mostly empty this early, except for the occasional shadow moving behind dirty windows or the shuffle of an unseen figure disappearing around a corner. In Baltimore's older districts, the buildings leaned in close to each other, their bricks dark with decades of grime, their windows clouded with dust. Ali's shoes scuffed against the pavement as he passed the old textile mill abandoned for years, its windows broken, the inside littered with rusted machinery and fallen beams. Local kids said a homeless man once went in there and never came out. Adults didn't talk about it, but they didn't go near it either. Ali avoided looking at it, though he could feel it, like something was aware of him as he passed. He turned down Dock Street, where the mist thickened. The air here smelled faintly of salt from the nearby harbor, mixed with the metallic tang of rust. A single streetlight flickered overhead. The road was so quiet he could hear the slow drip of water somewhere, each drop echoing faintly. He quickened his pace. That's when it happened, the sound that would change everything. At first, he thought it was the wind moving strangely between the buildings. But no, the wind didn't speak. 2 o'clock, vanish, here, underground. The voice was so soft, so close to his ear, that he froze in place. His breath fogged in the cold air, and his heart hammered. He spun around. The street was empty. Mist curled lazily in the air, hiding the corners of the buildings. Hello? His voice came out smaller than he intended. No answer. The sound of a distant truck rumbled faintly somewhere deeper in the city, but otherwise, nothing. Only the quiet, and the mist, and his own heartbeat in his ears. Ali swallowed hard and forced himself forward. He told himself it was nothing, maybe just the echo of some voice carried strangely by the wind. But the words lingered in his mind. The way they had been spoken, not like a warning exactly, but not friendly either. By the time the factory came into view, the sky was turning a dull silver. The building loomed over the street, 4 stories of red brick, its windows streaked with grime, its metal doors scarred from decades of use. Above the main entrance, the faded letters of the factory's name were barely legible. The air here was warmer, heavy with the scent of oil and smoke. Inside, the noise swallowed him instantly. The grinding of gears, the slap of conveyor belts, the clang of metal. The floor shook faintly with the rhythm of the machines. Ali's job was small but tiring, sorting scraps into bins, carrying them to the furnace room. It was dangerous work for someone his age, but nobody cared, not the overseer, not the men who worked alongside him. Everyone was too tired, too focused on their own survival. Still, even with all the noise, he thought about the voice. Every now and then, he would glance over his shoulder, half expecting to see someone watching him from the shadows. But there was nothing, just machines, dust, and tired faces. Hours passed. The gray light from outside shifted toward afternoon, dimming as the winter sun sank lower. In the middle of sorting a bin of metal shavings, one of the machines stopped with a sudden, jarring clunk. The sound cut through the factory floor, leaving an odd silence in its wake. And in that silence, "You don't belong here, turn back, before it's too late." Ali's hands froze on the bin. His skin prickled. This time, the voice was sharper, closer, and carried something else, urgency. He looked around quickly. No one else seemed to notice. Workers moved past him, heads down, eyes on their tasks. He shook himself and went back to work, but the voice had planted something in him, an unease that crawled under his skin and stayed there. By the time his shift ended, the sky outside had turned a deep blue. The mist had returned, thicker now, swirling between the buildings. The streets looked different at night, narrower, the shadows heavier. He pulled his coat tight again and started walking. The first sound was faint, a woman sobbing somewhere ahead. It was muffled, broken, as if she was crying into her hands. Ollie slowed, peering into the mist, but the street was empty. The sobbing stopped abruptly, replaced by something else, a faint, high-pitched laugh, like that of a little girl. It was playful, almost sweet, but there was something in it that made his skin crawl. And then came the footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Matching his own pace. He glanced back. Empty street. He tried to walk faster. The footsteps quickened too. Ollie. Ollie. The voice said his name like a secret. Like it had known him for a long, long time. His heart pounded. He broke into a run, not stopping until the familiar outline of his apartment building appeared through the mist. He didn't look back. That night, as he lay in bed, the city outside was quiet. But just before sleep claimed him, he thought he heard it again, a faint whisper, so close it could have been in the room with him. 2 o'clock, vanish. Here, underground. The next morning, Samuel woke before the sun, his mind restless from the nightmare that had clawed at him all night. It was the same dream again, the dim alley by the factory, the whisper that began soft as a breath and grew until it was all he could hear, echoing inside his skull. He had seen a shadow in that dream, standing far off but somehow close, its head tilted, its limbs too long to be human. It didn't move toward him. It just waited. He told himself it was only a dream, a trick of exhaustion from working the late shifts. But deep down, Samuel knew it wasn't just in his head. For weeks now, every night as he walked the broken sidewalks of Baltimore's deserted industrial district, he heard the whispers. Sometimes they said his name. Sometimes they murmured in a language he didn't know, wet, sticky syllables that curled through the night air like smoke. And sometimes, they sounded like the cries of children, hundreds of them echoing from somewhere beneath the ground. That day, the factory felt colder than usual. The old machinery groaned and rattled, coughing up sparks that lit the shadows for brief, flickering moments. Samuel's boss, Mr. Trask, was in a foul mood, barking orders with eyes that darted too often to the rusted trapdoor in the corner of the factory floor. No one went near that door. It had been bolted shut for decades, they said, after a collapse in the tunnels below killed an entire crew. But when Samuel passed it carrying a crate, he heard something. A faint tapping. Slow at first, then frantic. He froze, his chest tightening, every muscle telling him to run. Then came the voice, high and trembling. Let us out. The words didn't just enter his ears, they slid into his head, crawling along his thoughts until they nested there. He dropped the crate and backed away, but the sound followed him, whispering just behind his ear no matter where he moved. That night, the streets were emptier than usual. The street lamps flickered, and the shadows between them stretched too far, as if something was pulling the darkness longer, dragging it toward him. Samuel walked faster, the whispers swirling in the air around him now, overlapping, growing louder. They weren't only coming from the alleys anymore, they were in the brick walls, the sewer grates, the cracks in the sidewalk. Baltimore's night itself was speaking to him. Then he saw it, the shadow from his dream. At the end of the street, standing perfectly still, its head tilted in that same unnatural way. Samuel stopped breathing. The figure lifted its arms slowly, impossibly long, and pointed at him. Behind it, the street seemed to ripple like the surface of black water. The whispers rose to a scream. And from the ground beneath his feet came a deep, grinding sound like something ancient waking up. The pavement trembled. The old trapdoor in the factory flashed in his mind. He knew then that the voices weren't calling from the alleys. They were calling from below. And tonight, they weren't just calling. They were coming.